I remember the day I decided to retire the name Twitter, a move many people called reckless, impulsive, or downright insane. But to me, it was the logical next step in transforming a fragmented social chatterbox into something more elemental, a force for global communication unbound by the limitations of 140-character nostalgia. And I thought the world understood that evolution requires shedding skins, but apparently the universe enjoys a good plot twist because now, out of nowhere, this fresh little startup has popped up and marched straight into the US Patent Office, waving a flag and shouting that the old trademarks, Twitter, tweet, the iconic relics of the Bluebird era, have been abandoned, left in the attic like dusty artifacts I supposedly no longer care about. And they're claiming that because X is expanding beyond its past identity, because we dared to reinvent what a platform could be, the name that once defined an era suddenly belongs to anyone fast enough to pick it up off the floor, and I can already hear the legal machinery warming up like rocket engines on a launch pad as my team sifts through every filing, every nuance of trademark law, every argument about use, non-use, intentional abandonment, and what it truly means to retire branding in the public eye while still retaining its foundational legacy. Because for me, these words, Twitter, tweet, aren't just trademarks. They're part of a narrative arc stretching from a social media revolution to the frontier of AI-driven communication. And watching someone attempt to reclaim them feels a bit like someone showing up at SpaceX and declaring that since we're laser focused on Mars, they're going to take over Falcon 1 because we're obviously too busy to appreciate its history. And so here I am reflecting on how bizarrely poetic it is that the moment you set something free for the sake of reinvention, someone else tries to snatch it as treasure. And I find myself wanting to explain to this startup, to the public, to anyone listening, that reinvention doesn't mean relinquishing heritage, that the evolution of Twitter into X wasn't an erasure, but an expansion, an attempt to build a platform that isn't constrained by a bird or sound effect, but instead aims to operate on a higher plane of communication, identity, and expression. And maybe this whole situation will end up as another colorful chapter in the saga of building things people think are impossible. Maybe it'll be a footnote in trademark history classes or a meme people post under the latest rocket launch stream. But either way, it's a reminder that progress is messy, that not everyone sees the future the same way, and that even when you think you've laid an old symbol to rest, someone out there is always ready to resurrect it, repackage it, and attempt to claim it as their own. Which means the story of Twitter, yes, even the name itself, isn't done yet. And maybe it never will be, because every transformation leaves behind echoes, and apparently some echoes refuse to fade quietly into the night. And so the saga kept unfolding in ways that would have made even my past self raise an eyebrow. Because just as I was settling into the rhythm of building X into an everything platform, a place where payments, content, AI, and expression could coexist like components on a starship hull, I found myself watching the world dissect this trademark challenge like it was the launch telemetry for a particularly explosive rocket. And the irony wasn't lost on me that something as simple as a name, a sound, a little cultural artifact like tweet could stir up more noise than rewriting the architecture of digital communication. So now every conversation around me feels like a panel on heritage versus innovation, on whether evolution requires leaving things behind or carrying them forward like heirlooms in a spacecraft heading for deep space. And I can already see how this startup imagines itself as a brave explorer, planting a flag on land I supposedly abandoned. But what they don't understand is that you can't just grab history like a souvenir from a tourist shop, because symbols don't vanish simply because you repaint the sign on the front door. And while they're arguing that the old names should belong to them, I'm thinking about how brands become part of collective memory, how millions of people shaped the meaning of those words long before any corporation filed paperwork. And it feels almost amusing in a cosmic sort of way that by trying to scoop up the remnants of the past, they have actually reminded the world how significant that past remains. Almost as if the legacy they're chasing is proving my point about why we needed to evolve in the first place. And as I watch all this play out, I keep returning to the same thought. Innovation attracts gravity, and the bigger a transformation becomes, the more orbiting debris shows up around it. Whether that's skepticism, attempts to reclaim what's been shed, or opportunistic stunts disguised as legal philosophy. But none of it changes the mission, because X was never about discarding history. It was about transcending it. And maybe this trademark dispute will stretch on, twist into strange shapes, spark outrage, inspire memes, or fade into procedural obscurity. But whatever happens, it reinforces an unavoidable truth I've learned over and over again. From rockets exploding, to cars redefining transportation, to AI reshaping the edges of human thought. That any time you push forward, the past tries to pull you back, and you just have to keep accelerating until the noise becomes background radiation, and the only thing left in front of you is the next frontier waiting to be built. And as this whole trademark episode kept gaining orbit, swirling through the media cycles like space junk catching glints of sunlight, I found myself reflecting on how strange it is that people fixate on symbols while overlooking the machinery of transformation happening right in front of them. Because here I am trying to build X into something that eclipses the old definitions of social media, trying to architect a platform that operates more like a neural layer woven across the planet, connecting commerce, ideas, and self-expression in a way that feels more like a digital nervous system than a simple app. Yet the world keeps pulling me back into debates about whether resurrecting a bluebird from the archives means someone can claim ownership of an entire cultural chapter. And it's almost comical watching this startup swagger into the story like an adventurer who found an abandoned temple, convinced the previous inhabitants moved out and left the artifacts behind. But what they don't see is that the temple didn't vanish. It evolved into a city, a continent, a new civilization of data and communication. And while they try to dust off old words like Twitter and tweet and plant them like stolen relics, I'm thinking about how innovation is never a clean break, how every technological shift leaves behind footprints that people misinterpret as absence, when really they're just evidence of motion. And in a way, I suppose I should thank them, because their little legal quest has unexpectedly reignited global fascination with the very heritage I was told would be forgotten the instant we rebranded, proving that legacy doesn't disappear when you rename it. It lingers, sometimes louder than before, echoing through court filings, news cycles, and conversations in coffee shops. And while my legal team prepares their counter-arguments and the startup prepares their rebuttals, I'm watching all of it with a sort of amused patience. The same feeling I get of when a rocket fails a test flight, because I know the trajectory is still correct even if turbulence tries to knock the nose off course. And no matter how many people try to reclaim artifacts from the past, it won't change the gravitational pull of the future we're building. Because X isn't a successor to Twitter. It's the evolution of everything Twitter ever hinted at. And so I'll keep moving forward, letting the noise flare and fade, knowing that history will record not who tried to dig up fossils, but who built the next epoch on top of them.